The year is 1999 and the world is on the brink of collapse.
This is one of those days that I never thought would ever arrive. This is not a challenge that is susceptible to a single government program. It is a complex test that requires us all to work together.
President Clinton has already issued an open warning, news channels are screaming danger, and predictions are made that planes will fall from the sky, banks will stop functioning, and nuclear bombs will launch out of nowhere. This was due to a silly computer bug called the Y2K bug.
Y2K. What does it mean?
Using 2 digits rather than 4.
Global shutdown because of Y2K.
But when workers advance clocks to the year 2000? Our systems are broken.
We've got a problem with a couple of digits.
Y2K bug, a line of computer code that could not recognize dates beyond 1999.
For those who don't know, back in the 1960s and 70s, memory was more precious than gold. It was so expensive that even 1 MB of additional storage would cost you $3 million. So engineers had to be very careful about every alphabet and every number they entered into the computer, because every alphabet needed more memory. But that's when they thought they found a hack. They thought in a database, instead of writing 1961, 1962, 1963, millions of dollars could be saved simply by writing 61, 62 and 63. Sounds simple, right? But there was one big problem. When the year was about to turn from 1999 to 2000, millions of computers all across the world would assume that they were suddenly in the year 1900. So engineers all across the world were scared that bank systems would calculate interest as if you traveled back to 1900. Aviation systems might ground planes thinking they hadn't been serviced in a century, and power grids could trigger emergency shutdowns, causing a blackout all across the US.
The glitch that could short-circuit cyberspace.
Glitches in the air traffic control system, breakdowns in oversight of nuclear plants and weapons.
A Senate panel reported that up to 40% of the country could be hit by power failures on New Year's 2000 because computers get confused.
This was the reason why there was a warning call all across the world that the Y2K bug needs to be fixed. But the problem was that to fix this problem, millions of lines of code needed to be rewritten, that too manually. Now, even though America was full of engineers, the challenge was that none of these engineers wanted to fix boring manual code. Back then, the dot-com bubble in the US was in full swing, and 22-year-old kids were busy building cool websites like Google and Amazon. So the biggest US and European companies were stranded at the edge of a nightmare. But that is when a bunch of engineers from India came to their rescue. And one of these companies was called Infosys. And the man who led the team was none other than Narayana Murthy.
Our business is built on the enterprise and talent of one man, Narayana Murthy.
Great showpiece of India's high-tech revolution, Infosys
is now one of the largest IT companies in the world, from the cloud and AI to digital marketing and consulting.
That year established Infosys as the global IT icon, and Infosys crossed $100 million in 1999 alone. And while most people saw them as engineers who got rich overnight, what they didn't realize was that those boys were preparing for that day since 18 long years. And when they started, they had no venture capital, no rich uncles, and not even a computer. But even then, those boys went on to build the most iconic IT company of India, which we all know today as Infosys. Today, Infosys makes 1.6 lakh crores in revenue, 26,000 crores in profits, and their stock price has shot up by 14,000% since 1999. But the question is, with no venture capital, no internet and no computer, how could 7 boys out of India build a $1 billion software company? Why were they preparing for a 1999 for 18 long years? What was their business strategy that turned them into a $1 billion company? And most importantly, what are the lessons that we need to learn from the incredible rise of Infosys? You know guys, मुझे ना एक बहुत interesting problem कह रहे मालूम पड़ा है, and I'm pretty sure even you have been scammed. Whenever your AC stops functioning, what do? You call the service engineer, he comes and examines the AC and he tells you that sir, इसमें ना gas की कमी है. But we somehow assume that because the AC starts functioning, that gas was the problem. But you tell me something, how do you know gas was really the problem? And you know what? Most of these people are actually lying to you. Gas is almost never the problem. An urban company identified this problem and they've solved this in the best possible manner. Firstly, urban company professionals now carry something called the co-pilot diagnostic device. This device plugs directly into your AC and clearly tells you whether gas is really required or not. Secondly, they use something called the foam jet technology. This foam goes deep into the AC coils right where the dirt actually builds up and cleans it properly. So you don't have to worry about surface level cleaning. And lastly, we all have waited for days, sometimes even for weeks, for the service engineer to show up. But with the Urban Company app, you can get the best professionals to service your AC, and that too in just 60 minutes. So stop relying on false claims and get the Urban Company app to get the best professionals, and that too in just 60 minutes. This is a story that dates back to 1981 India. Back then, India was an extremely backward country. Like I said, we were so backward that we had no computers, no internet, and even to get a scooter, you had to wait for years. Cherry on the cake, the highest tax slab was 66%. This was because of the license Raj, where you had to bribe the government, where you had to take license on the government for everything. But even in that impossible situation, 7 men gathered in a 1 BHK apartment in Pune and decided to build a world-class software company. All they had was 10,000 rupees of savings from a brave woman named Sudha Murthy.
I saved every month some money, and it was in a box I did not even calculate. When Murthy said, I want to start a software company in 1981, I thought over it. It was a Wednesday evening. Thursday morning, I counted, it was 10,250. The only investment I have made in life is 10,000 rupees. That's all.
So the question is, how did these 7 delusional middle-class boys build a world-class software company? Well, the first client that Narayana Murthy had was due to his exceptional work at his job. Before Infosys, Mr. Murthy was working at Patni Computer Systems in Pune. He was so brilliant at his job that his New York client would only talk to Murthy. His name was Don Lyles. So when Murthy started his company, Don gave him the contract. But Don was a sharp man. He knew that Murthy didn't have a big team. He knew that Murthy desperately needed him. And most importantly, Don knew that he could negotiate a cheaper rate with Murthy. So guess what? Don negotiated a dirt cheap price and gave Murthy his first contract. That is how Infosys got its first contract. This teaches us the first lesson of the story. In the early days of a startup, your reputation is your only currency. Don didn't bet on Infosys, he bet on Narayana Murthy's track record. So when you have no office and no team, your reputation is the most powerful instrument to get started. So no matter which company you work for, what job you do, always earn your reputation of excellence, because that reputation will help you build your company when you get started. But coming back to the story, without a computer, how did Murthy and the Infi boys build and ship software to New York? Well, guess what? For the first 2 years from 1981 to 1983, they would literally take turns flying to the US, where they would live at Don's office and use their massive IBM mainframe computers all day, all night, just to hand over the code. And by the way, they would also write code on paper in India and then ship it to the US, hoping that it would run without errors. In fact, when I met Mr. Murthy, he told me that Infosys was able to deliver great products because Nandan Nilekani used to write code like poems. So Nandan sir, if you're watching this episode, big fan. On top of that, since the Infi boys had no money to spend on food or hotel, while the American engineers went to fancy restaurants, after 14 hours of work, these 7 boys would come back to their tiny apartment and cook a massive pot of dal khichdi. And for lunch, while American executives went to fine dine restaurants, the Infi boys would eat cold bread and jam sandwiches. Now, I want you to take a pause and imagine this for a second. Imagine you are Nandan Nilekani or Narayana Murthy. You are a genius engineer, a topper from IIT. But while your friends are dining at the finest restaurants in New York, you are standing over a small stove in a cramped Brooklyn apartment. While your friends are buying cars and houses, you are washing utensils to save money for the bus next day. While they are enjoying weekends with their families, you are burning the midnight oil with 14 hours of work. My question is, how would you feel? Absolutely terrible, right? But do you realize the same men today are worth billions of dollars? So the lesson to be learned here is that comparison is the killer of all joy. if you're building a business, you have to sacrifice birthdays, you have to sacrifice weddings, and you have to sacrifice fun. That is the trade-off for greatness. In fact, when you're in your grinding mode, when you're chasing your dreams, the greatest favor you can do to yourself is stop comparing your life with Instagram content. And please remember, the early days will be tough, humiliating, and depressing. But if you think you're too big to wash the dishes, remember, you're already too small to start a business. And by the way, the Infi boys stuck to this grind for 2 long years. And after 50 trips to Delhi, they finally got a computer in 1983. And then, for another 4 years, from 1983 to 1987, Dawn was giving them 90% revenue. So they were over-dependent on Dawn, and they were barely taking out salaries because all the money got reinvested into recruiting engineers, offices, and infrastructure. But finally, after 6 years, they saw another opportunity. This opportunity came from Reebok. Back then, KSA was a company that was acting as a management consultant to retail giants. And since the Infi boys did excellent work with Dawn, KSA asked Reebok to talk to the boys. So do you realize this was again compounding of reputation that was kicking in? Now Murthy and the team realized that KSA had a big problem. They were great at advising, but they could not build software. This is where Murthy and his teammate Chris saw an opportunity. They told KSA, listen guys, you have clients who trust you, but if they cannot build that inventory management system that you recommended, your advice is of no use. So let's crack a partnership. Whenever you advise your clients to build a software solution, recommend them to build with Infosys. That is how Infosys cracked a joint venture with KSA to build software for their clients. And their first client was Reebok. And after Reebok, they started selling to Fortune 500 retail firms in the US and Europe, and eventually they got clients like General Electric, Nestle, Cisco, and even Apple. And this part of the story has a very important business lesson for all of us. When you're a small company, don't directly sell to the giant. Sell to the person that the giant already listens to. So list the top 3 consultants or agencies in your niche and see what their clients need and find a synergy to sell your product through them. If you do, you will unlock opportunities more efficiently. Because remember, success isn't about how many doors you knock on. It's about which door you choose to knock on. That is how Infosys survived from 1981 to 1990. And then came a game changer. On 24th of July 1991, exactly 10 years after Infosys started, Dr. Manmohan Singh announced the liberalization of India. And finally, the license Raj came to an end.
This budget represents a contribution to the successful implementation of this great national enterprise of building an India is on the move again. We shall make the future happen.
Our markets were opened to the world with ease of doing business being made paramount not just for foreign companies but also Indian entrepreneurs. This was made possible by the abolishment of the license permit Raj and cutting back on import duty.
Long story short, after 1991, the import duty on computers was reduced, you could easily carry foreign currency outside, tax slabs were reduced, and most importantly, a businessman was not seen as an evil man by the government. And as you can see in this chart, Infosys revenue grew from 8.6 crores in 1992 to 500 crores in 1999. And then came the big bang of Y2K. Like I said, Americans had all the money in the world, but no manpower to fix it. But while the world saw a crisis, Narayana Murthy saw the opportunity of a lifetime. He told those American companies, you don't have the manpower? No problem. We have hundreds of engineers who can fix the problem for you. You don't understand these old systems? No problem. We have built our 18-year career on these old systems. And the best part, we can fix these systems while you sleep. So in that 1 year, 18 years of hard work, years of dal khichdi, years of counting pennies, and years of struggle, sacrifice, and pain finally started paying off. That 1 year alone changed the perception of India from a snake charmer's country into a software engineer's paradise. Companies that wouldn't even look at Indian vendors were now begging Infosys to save them. And more importantly, after Infosys fixed the Y2K bug for multi-billion-dollar companies, those billion-dollar companies started trusting Infosys with multi-million-dollar contracts. As a result, Infosys made so much money that they went from 500 crores in 1999 to 921 crores in 2000 to 2,600 crores in 2002 to 13,000 crores in 2007. And by the end of the decade, Infosys was sitting on 22,000 crores in revenue. Today, Infosys generates 1.5 lakh crores a year with 26,000 crores in profits as of FY24. That is how Mr. Murthy and his 6 boys built a company worth $75 billion with just 10,000 rupees in capital, no computer, no internet, but with an unshakable supply of audacity, persistence, and grit. And this is what teaches us the most important lesson of the story. Persistence and consistency are 2 attributes that can turn a commoner into a king. In this case, for 10 long years, from 1981 to 1991, nobody clapped for Infosys. Most people would give up when it gets hard. And Narayana Murthy didn't succeed because he was the smartest man in the country. There were thousands of engineers smarter than him. He succeeded because he was a patient, adamant man. He waited 2 years for a computer, 10 years for a policy change, and it took him 18 years to see the Y2K boom. So if you're working on something today and you feel like nothing is happening, if you feel like you're pushing against a wall, good. Because that wall is there to stop the people who don't want it bad enough. So keep your head down, keep washing the dishes, keep writing the code, because the only way you lose is if you stop walking. Be so persistent that the world has no choice but to give you what you want. Because remember, persistence and consistency are 2 superpowers that can turn a commoner into a king. In this case, it turned 7 boys in a 1 BHK apartment into the pioneers of the Indian IT revolution. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable from this case study, please hit the like button to support our work. And for more such business case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.